What's going on, family? I'm just here to remind you that you can get yourself a copy of my new book, On the Shoulders of Giants, Volume 4 of the Caribbean, by visiting my website, www.ontheshoulders1.com, and help support me as I continue on my mission to make sure that my people have our information, even though, there are many people trying to stop us from learning our history. But hey, we can teach ourselves. And one of the tools we can use is my new book, On the Shoulders of Giants, Volume 4, The Caribbean. Remember, visit my website, www.ontheshoulders1.com, to get your copy. And I appreciate your support. What's up, my people? Welcome back to the On the Shoulders of Giants YouTube channel. I am Joseph Ward. Ride with me today is the homie, Mr. Patrick Irvin, and I appreciate Pat because, hey man, he rocking with me on the Shoulders of Giants. He got the shirt on. Show him the shirt. He got the shirt on. Hey, merch. We're gonna talk about merch. Gonna come soon. We got to get our foundation together. Merch is gonna come soon. But I appreciate Pat for rocking with me. He's been rocking with me from day one, and so we're getting together to bring you all a breakdown of Dr. Francis Cress Welsing speaking about. Well, the title is, one of the titles I saw was Do White People Hate Black People? And also talking about genetic annihilation and the white person's place in the world and in history, despite the idea of genetic annihilation or negative birth rate. So we're going to be breaking down like a 4 or 5 minute clip from Dr. Francis Cress Welsing. But before we get to that, this is my man, Pat. This is his book, The Chasm. Hey, man, tell him about your book.
I came ready today too for the first time.
Tell my folk about your book.
So the book was written almost 10 years ago now. But it was just recently published. And it's a book looking at the growing divide between men and women. What historically, how close have we been to each other and how we've drifted apart over the years. And the second half of the book actually talks about some solutions and things we can do to come back together. So you can find the book on Amazon. It's called The Chasm. The Chasm. The Chasm. Just type in The Chasm on Amazon by Patrick Irvin. And if you see something that look like this, you're in the right spot.
That's it. There it is. And remember to visit my website. You see it on the screen, www.ontheshoulders1.com. Make sure you visit the website where you can support me. You can get your copy of my books, On the Shoulders of Giants, Volumes 1, 2, 3, and 4. Volume 1 is North America, Central America, South America, now the Caribbean. So I have all that on my website. You can support me on Patreon at patreon.com/OTSOG. That's scrolling across the bottom of the screen. But welcome. We ain't gonna delay no further. So we're here to break down Dr. Francis Cress Welsing speaking about the idea of white genetic annihilation, white negative birth rates, and I'm asking, and I'm putting it in the overall question in your minds: do white people hate us? So we're gonna break it down. Let Dr. Francis Cress. We're gonna play the video. We're gonna stop and give our breakdown as we go. Then after the video, give a summary of it. So all right with us.
This theory was an attempt back in the late 1960s to explain what I thought it is a Cress theory of color confrontation and racism, white supremacy, an attempt to, as a psychiatrist, as a black psychiatrist, to understand, well, what exactly is this thing that we call racism, white supremacy? Looking at why do white people behave in the way that they do. You see, in concluding that it has to do, number one, with their minority status on the planet, their genetic recessive status, in that they could experience genetic annihilation, in that the overwhelming majority of people on the planet are black, brown, red, and yellow. And whites constitute fewer than 1/10 of the people on the planet.
Right. So, kind of take this in pieces and go with that. So, first of all, let's make sure we understand what racism is. Right. So, from your understanding, Pat, what is racism?
So are we breaking down what she's saying, or are we just giving our own opinions?
Because we breaking down what she's saying, but adding our opinions in it as well.
Okay. Because from what she's saying that racism, my interpretation of what she's saying, right? That's fair, right? I can say that, right?
Yeah.
All right. My interpretation of what she's saying is that because white people are so few in number, compared to the rest of the world's population, they feel a need to protect themselves when they come in contact with other groups, and to protect themselves, their resources, their culture, and their genetic viability, the continuation of their genetic line.
Right.
And that manifests itself in confrontations that amount to hoarding power, hoarding resources, and establishing dominance over all other social groups. Is that fair?
That's fair. That's fair. So I would add, no, as far as our own opinions and what we already know, not just opinions, but information that we already know. So I would more so go with Dr. Claude Anderson's definition mixed with what Dr. Francis Cress Welsing and Neely Fuller were talking about. So race being a competition between groups of people for land, power, resources, and wealth. And then once you grab the land, power, resources, and wealth, the white supremacy and the white domination would come in to maintain that land, power, resources, and wealth. Because you're not going to obtain all this stuff just to lose it. So you're going to put some kind of mechanism in place to make sure that you can retain that power. You can remain dominant. You're not going to allow a group that you just dominated regain power and become superior to you. So yeah, they're a small portion of the groups of people or the races of people. The white population is small, like say 10%, but through their savage behaviors and their terroristic behaviors, they've been able to dominate most of the world.
I would agree with that personally. If I'm injecting my personal opinion, and I would say, yeah, the establishment and maintenance of dominance and influence is how I would define it. If I were to simplify it, one group being superior in status to another group or all of the other groups would be like racism in action. And then here I feel like it's necessary to make the distinction between the practice of racism and the racist ideology, because those are two different things to me.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Because I say it different. I just say, I always ask people, what's more racist to you? What a person does or what a person says? Because that's a big difference. Because I can say what I want to say, but if I have no ability to act on what I'm saying, I don't really have no power. But if I can say what I want to say and act on it and continue to create things to act on and act on, I have power.
Right. So the practice of racism, the systems of racism are more significant and impactful than the ideology of the races. But we frequently find ourselves battling the ideology instead of focusing in on the tangible real world effects.
Right. But also understanding that the ideology helps create the culture in the individuals, but it's the actions. At the end of the day, it's the actions. Because if I can't reinforce none of what I'm saying, it don't matter.
Well, because we talk about apathy all the time, right? Somebody doesn't necessarily have to be racist to benefit from and support the racist system. Right. Like ideologically, they don't have to believe it themselves. They might think everybody's equal, but that doesn't mean that they're going to give up the benefits that they have under the system that allows them to have those benefits because of their race.
Right. All right. So let's continue.
One of the things that we find that is happening now is there's this constant countdown you see on the news all the time to when America's a majority minority nation. So there's still this countdown happening in terms of when white folks will be in the minority.
They will be a majority minority, which is nonsensical. There will be a white minority. If the non-white, if black, brown, red, and yellow people are here, they will be the majority and whites will be the minority. You see, and it's a illogical statement to talk about a majority minority. I mean, which is like white supremacy. I still have to put myself on top. I have to pose that I am genetically superior to compensate. I say it's a compensation for a genetic recessive status. Well, I think I was the first person to talk about white genetics.
So I want to say there, I love the tone of it, but I disagree with what she said.
Elaborate.
So it's not nonsensical to say that something is the majority minority. It's a very fancy, overly whatever way of saying that. Yeah, like they're saying that there will be a minority group in terms of raw numbers, but they're still going to be the largest group. So if you add everybody up in America, then the total of everybody else is going to be more than white people. But the total of each of those individual groups is still not going to be larger than the individual total of white people.
Right.
So
right now,
go ahead.
I do understand that, but in my opinion, for her coming from the idea, because remember, we're giving a group of people information who is hearing this for the first time, who's understanding psychologically what has happened to us for probably the first time. So it is nonsensical in the physical raw sense of you all are not the total majority of the world. And like you said, if you add everybody together, you're not the total majority. So it's nonsensical in that sense, but I get what you're saying. It makes sense in a sense of this is who we are. This is the position that we've gained. And if you look at other groups, if you break each group down and pit white people against each other group, as of right now, white people still have the raw numbers more than anybody else. But on the world scale, and I think that's what she's talking about on the worldwide scale.
Well, I'm not sure that's what she's talking about, though. Might have to run it back. Can we run it back?
Let's run it back.
Will be the majority and white. They will be a majority minority.
We find that it's happening now is there's this constant countdown you see on the news all the time to when America's a majority minority nation. So there's still this countdown happening in terms of when white folks will be in the minority.
They will be a majority minority, which is nonsensical.
Okay, so if you're just talking about on the American scale, but she's also talking about something futuristic. So she's saying they will be a majority minority. So she's talking about in the time where the Hispanic, especially Hispanic group, passes the white group as far as births.
Well, and so from a propagandist standpoint, and what you said, I can feel that in terms of exposing this information to people at a time period where they weren't exposed to anything like it before. The only reason, and so if this was 20, 30 years ago, I wouldn't be saying this. But nowadays, it's kind of like, all right, it's time for us to move into reality. You know what I'm saying? So,
I'm with you. I'm for with you on moving past the talking points and moving toward action.
Right. So from that perspective, go ahead. I'm sorry.
But given the context of when she gave this interview, it's relevant for that.
Right. And I'm not trying to take anything away from the context of when she made it. I'm trying to say for people that are listening
to make
it
this relevant
and going to keep running forward with the same narrative, it doesn't work like that anymore. And it also supposes that Black people and all of the other minority groups in America are going to unite. and fight against white supremacy. And we know that that's not going to happen either, which is to me the real danger in people not fully understanding the context of when she said and what she said and how that applies to what we're dealing with today. White people are going to be the minority, the majority minority. But they're still going to have all the power because black people can't even unite together, much less black people, Hispanics, most of whom identify as white, Native Americans, and everybody else.
Well, what's going to happen is it's going to be two groups of people in America that have more power, with a third group about to pass us for more power.
Right.
I mean, really, because we're the only group of people who, like, we hear this information, but we're not growing from this information. And so that's one of my biggest issues.
We've already been passed, though.
Right.
The Hispanics have already passed us.
Yeah. Yes, they have. Yes, they have. Okay. But let's let it continue.
Yeah.
There will be a white minority if the non-white, if the black, brown, red, and yellow people are here. They will be the majority, and whites will be the minority. You see, and it's a illogical statement to talk about a majority minority. I mean, which is like white supremacy. I still have to put myself on top. I have to pose that I am genetically superior to compensate. I say it's a compensation for a genetic recessive status. Well, I think I was the first person to talk about white genetic annihilation in those terms, and that racism is ultimately a total system for white genetic survival and to prevent white genetic annihilation on a planet that has the genetics and the demographics that exist on third planet from the sun, which is planet Earth. So I was the first to put it in those terms, and my thesis has not been refuted. I would say.
So let's deal with that, and that's why I like this video, because they got the stopping points and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I think from what I've learned about racism, I think racism is a part of what she was saying. I think what she's describing racism in its current form of maintenance, because it had to start at a point of dominance where we have to go dominate the world. And once we dominate the world, we have to put systems in place, like I said earlier, to maintain our power, to maintain that superiority. So yes, I'm going to tell you that you're a minority, and I want you to believe that you're a minority. I want you to think, operate, and live like a minority, so you can always look up to us and help us maintain our position of power. I mean, that's what they do.
I think nowadays, I do think there was a period of time where there was a lot of vested resources put into making black people feel like numerically we were inferior, like we didn't have a chance. I think racism has shifted. I don't think that that's really an issue for them anymore, because they have the resources, the tools, and the technology.
Right. Well, yeah, because the maintenance is not necessarily, I think they have, well, I do think they have people who go out and do things for the maintenance of it.
Right.
But I think the real system of maintenance is, and for YouTube algorithm, creating the NIGGERS, that mindset for black people, the Negro, I'm just say Negro mindset, right? Because you are it's something that's self-sustaining, it's a negative self-sustaining person. This person they're going to eliminate themselves, and we don't have to do it. We don't have to put in the work. All we have to do is create this archetype, create this type of person, and make sure this person reproduces themselves, and make sure this mind and this culture reproduces itself, because they're going to eliminate each other. So yes, we still have our maintenance in place, and yes, it happens sometimes, but for the most part, they maintain it themselves, because look how they treat themselves.
Right. And I think one of the other things here is that at this time, one of the things that I do think was very groundbreaking about what she was doing at the time was, I believe she was one of the first people, one of the first Black people, anyways, to publicly and coherently put forth a biological reasoning behind white supremacy.
Yeah.
And I think not lately, but in the later years of her life, when she wasn't speaking out or she wasn't as popular, people started to convert that biological theory into a cultural theory. And that's where it starts to not fit, because it's not a cultural theory. It's looking at the biology of the situation, the genetics of the situation, the epigenetic expression. Is looking at those things. And so those are the things that, even as I was listening to it, I had to keep in my mind, is that she's not talking about cultural issues. She's talking purely from the biological
survival standpoint.
Right.
Yeah, straight survival. Like, just go straight to the raw survival of the fittest. Because you got to think about mentalities of people that came out of caves, and like she said, a scarce mentality, a mentality of we have to fight every day for everything, and we can't let you take nothing from us. We have to take everything from you.
Right. And that's one thing that links her with Dr. Joy DeGrew's PTSS, because she talks about a little bit about the biological standpoint and how it may have the environmental standpoint and how it may have shaped the culture from the standpoint of, like you said, they come out of the caves, or they live in an environment where scarcity is the law. There's just not enough. There's not a lot. So you begin to be very aggressive and violent and hostile towards anybody that comes in space that could potentially take something from you.
Yeah.
Because this is a life or death situation. Whereas people from other climates, more social people, Black people, Native Americans, even the Asians, to an extent, come from an environment where there's an abundance. We don't have that same mentality. So we're more likely to share what we have. We're more likely to be pleasant to outsiders.
Yeah. We welcome everybody in.
Right.
And because it's just like the what's the post Dominique shared in the chat with the African children calling themselves derogatory names in Chinese.
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing I thought was, we're too friendly. We keep letting people in. We keep allowing people to have access to our women and children, and women, especially our women, because our women are going to pass this on to the children. We are too accessible. We're too friendly to people. Like Dr. Clark said, you want a friend, damn it, look in the mirror.
Yeah. And so one of the things is white genetic annihilation. I think that drives, on a biological level, that drives all group dynamic behaviors, interactions. Because you hear Black people saying the same thing about wanting to maintain our position of dominance genetically and wanting to maintain some sense of physicality. So I think there's that, but I also think, like, that's where I add on to it the cultural piece, which I know she isn't talking about that, but there are quite a few white people that are racist that are not on the extreme genetic purity tip of the Nazis and the alt-right, but are just on some, I just need my culture to survive.
Yeah.
I don't care about genetic purity. Black people have some features I like. I like big asses, big tits. I like golden brown skin. And just like they can breed us out, if a Black person keeps breeding with white people for eventually the opposite happens as well.
And so but also, I'm glad you said that, because it was something I was thinking about earlier as I was driving through the city. That yes, and Black people do have the greatest amount of melanin, so we could pose the greatest threat. But not just black people, but any melanated people, black, Asians, Hispanic, Latino, any melanated people. If the melanated people mate with the white people long enough, the white people gonna be bred out. Especially if the melanated people keep breeding like that, and it can go with all these different groups, but it can go some of the other way around. And of course, it'd probably be easier with the Asian, with lighter, with fairer skin tones and things. But over time, man, things can happen. Over time, things can happen. But also coupling this with abortion rates as well in the black community. Like the black community probably would be, we probably would either be on par with the Hispanic, probably past them, or even on par with white people if we didn't have so many abortions in our community. So,
yeah, our population would definitely be drastically higher if we didn't have abortions, but that opens up the conversation about what would our overall state of community be.
Well, we know it'd be the same because we ain't got no real leadership. And I keep going places and people keep trying to argue with me that leadership isn't needed. Okay.
Yeah, I hear that a lot too.
Yeah. But let's continue.
That if my definition is understood, that racism, white supremacy is the fear on the part of people who classify themselves as white about white genetic annihilation and the concern for white genetic survival. This would therefore mean logically and specifically that the focus has to be on black males, because black people have the greatest genetic potential to produce the black pigment melanin, which gives all skin color. And since we have the highest level of genetically determined ability to produce this pigment that can cause white genetic annihilation, and it's only males who can impose sexual intercourse. And so the focus consciously, subconsciously has to zero in on the males. This is why I say that understanding, I'm not talking about institutional racism, I'm talking about a total system construct that develops out of certain patterns of thinking on the part of people who classify themselves as white relative to specific realities that exist on this planet. And so then once that is understood, that the fear of genetic annihilation that takes to the focus on the male, the black male person, as being the number one perceived threat, the number one enemy, and everything flows from that.
I've always thought black masculinity has been under attack. That's just me personally. But knowing, just understanding how warfare, battle, and the tactics people use to impose themselves on other people. If you have to dismantle or disable the males and get the males out of the way to have access to the women and children. So the black men are going to be a target because they're the protectors and they're the guess you could say the person who's the instigator in sex, or the person who's initiating sex rather. So I do know you have to get the man out the way to get to the women and children. Once, like you said earlier, once you get to the women and children, you can impose whatever type of ideas and things. Yes, you're gonna get fight. You're gonna get some resistance, but you're gonna get a little less resistance, especially if they've seen their men be decimated. So think about what we see on a regular basis from a lot of black men. There's some good black men, some real black men out there. Shout out to all of them. But you know, a lot of the images and things that we've been fed over the years throughout our life about black men has been negative. The docile, black man lazy, black men stupid, black men can't do this, black men can't do that, black men in second class, black man is negative. And then, but coupling that with what she's saying about the genetic the genetic need to survive, but also understanding that this group of people that we enslaved and these people who are behind enemy lines have the greatest potential to breed us out.
So on one hand, I get it in terms of, because I was just reading a study earlier this week talking about how violence towards members of an outgroup actually elicits a response in the reward circuitry of the brain. So to simplify that for people, your brain responds favorably to you attacking somebody that's not a part of your group. And so that alone explains a lot, just that by itself. But on the other end, I agree with what you said in terms of you have to get the men out of the way because of the way confrontations and wars and conflicts between groups are typically fought. It's typically a physical activity, a physical interaction where men are clashing against each other. And women, while they can participate in that activity and they have been successful, generally speaking, an army of men and an army of women, the army of men is going to win, generally speaking, barring technological advances and stuff like that. So that's where I say I agree with what you're saying from the protector standpoint. And that's also where I kind of waver a bit from her stance on it's purely about the males being able to force sex on the women. So we have to remove them from the equation because black men could essentially rape white women if they wanted to. That's not what she said, but it's kind of paraphrasing of her saying men can impose sex.
Right.
And we know in today's day and age, women can impose sex as well. But that's I think that's modern.
Well, yeah, I mean, but in a larger sense, the imposition of sex is mainly going to come from the male. But women can impose sex. But white women can impose sex on us in this system and where we at now.
Right. That's what I'm getting at. That's what I'm getting at. And also from the standpoint of it would also take off the table, not take off the table, but make the conversation more difficult to have on other means and other uses for sexual warfare involving white women engaging with black men, such as the case which would be if a white woman finds herself in a marriage or a sexual relationship with a black man that has a lot of resources, knowing that black man is probably going to die before her. Those resources are going to get transferred to her and her community through that relationship. So I think that's again where you run into this area where she's talking purely about the biological imperative, but there's also this cultural piece that we need to grapple with on the other end that creates different possibilities than those that are purely presented from the biological standpoint. Does that make sense?
But yeah, it does. But I think that's the beauty in what we're doing in these videos that we're going to make. This is going to be the first of a series of a whole bunch of, but us breaking down these videos, because one of the main things like we talked about is looking at this information, analyzing this information, and thinking, how is this relevant to us today? Like in 2022, where we are right now, in June of 2022, how can we use Dr. Welsing's message to help us today? And not just because we got to get past the point where we're just listening to these people and admiring. Yes, Dr. Welsing, Dr. Amos Wilson, all on live. We know, but how can we use the information to make our individual and collective lives better? And if we're not thinking in that pathway, then we wasting their time.
Right. So somebody's got to pick up the torch and run with it. Somebody's got to take it a step further. And sometimes going further means taking a few steps back, which is something we need to do with all of our scholars because we have more information available than they had at the time. And we also have the ability of both foresight from their original position and hindsight from our original position. And it's kind of a waste if we don't use that. There is a lot of brilliant things that Dr. Cress Welsing said, put forth, and made. But if you're just going to take her philosophy from 30 years ago and cut and paste it to today, you're not doing anybody any good.
We don't need no amen corners. That's not what we need. No amen corners. But let's let this ride. So start to wrap this up. Okay, Glenn, that's it.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. Oh, well, all right. I thought there was some more. It still had a little blue. So
nah,
right.
I listened to it enough times. I was like, he's like, maybe there's something else coming.
That's it. But so I looked at some information from the Pew Research Center and the CDC and the U.S. Census, just to go back and make sure that I had information to kind of back up what Dr. Francis Cress Welsing was saying as far as the negative birth rates. And I put all the links to all the studies and things that I was looking at in the description. But this Pew research that I was looking at from 2008 is showing the information on it was showing that white people do have a negative birth rate. But one thing that a lot of our scholars didn't say is all races of people in America have a negative birth rate, especially for nowadays, for where we are now in the world. All people in America have a negative birth rate. But white people do have a declining birth rate that's kind of declining a little more steadily over the years than other people. So like for example, white birth rate, black birth rates and Hispanic birth rates, if we want to focus on them, or if we just want to focus on black birth rates, that's because of the actual culture that we have now of black people not getting married, black people not getting together, and less. It's actually less people having babies now overall across the board, and a lot of people don't understand. Yeah, black people have a lot of babies, Hispanic people have a lot of babies, but there's less people having babies. You have more men and women over the age of 30 who have no children, like me.
Right, and that's one of the things that I did, and I'm glad you brought it up because I had totally forgotten. Since the Great Recession, birth rates have been trending down.
Right.
Since the and for those of you that are too young to remember the Great Recession, it's hard to believe that it's kids that either weren't alive or were too young to remember the Great Recession that's on YouTube right now. That's kind of crazy. But anyways, following that period of time, which was the original eraser of all of the gains that black people made economically from the 1960s to that point, people stopped having babies. And there are a lot of different ideas and theories about why that is and how that is. Shifting priorities. People decided they wanted to do other things instead of having kids. People decided they wanted to put having kids off into a later age. And then they find out that having a kid ain't that easy when you old, when you 35 plus, 30 plus. So, there are a lot, but the fact of the matter is everybody's having less babies. Yeah. The old stereotype of Keisha having 16 kids. You would think about it like back in the day, you used to think about like when we were growing up, we used to think about a hood girl with like 5-6 kids. She got a lot of kids. Nowadays, we're talking about hood girls with 2 or 3.
But even in that, it's not just like the hood chick that have less babies, but the average woman or the successful woman who maybe 50 years ago, across the board, all those women would be married and have children. Now, it's a good chance that neither one of these women are married, and maybe one of the 3 may have children, because just because she a hood chick don't mean she got kids.
Right. And right. And thank you for that. The point I was making with that was because all the way back since Adam Smith wrote his book on economics. It has been well established science for the last 100, 200 years that poor people have more kids than rich people. That's been established. And typically, people in poverty were the ones driving up the birth rate because they were having all the kids.
Right.
So that's what I was getting at with that. Back in the days,
Right.
people in poverty were having 9, 10, 11 kids. Nowadays, they have that same stigma of being in poverty and blah, but they don't have the same amount of kids.
Right. But people not taking into account the cultural change in that as well. But like I said, just overall across the board though, especially in America, Americans are producing babies at a lower rate than ever. But the Hispanics are going to pass the white population. Some say 2030, some say 2050. But the Hispanics are going to pass them because yes, there is a steady decline in the white birth rates that has been happening over the years. But the Hispanics are slated to pass them. Black numbers seem like they're going to be stagnant, and Asian numbers are rising like inching, trying to just poop up just a little bit. But black numbers have been stagnant. Yeah, and because they've been telling us I'm 38 years old. We've been 14% of the population all my life.
Nah, at one point we was like 12.9.
Oh, my bad. a little dip, but we back up.
Nah, we've been between 12 and 15 for the last 40 years or so. Yeah.
But overall though, we're going to break down videos like this and other videos from our scholars moving forward because we want to bring a perspective of how is this relevant to today and how can we use this for today, and is it even still relevant, and how could we better use this information? Because we started off looking at, I think black people, we need to understand who our enemy is. We need to understand the enemy without, and we need to understand the enemy within. Right? Because we'll be fooling ourselves if we act like we don't do it to ourselves. Absolutely. But once again, in my opinion, from all my research and my information, it's not that just black people just don't like black people. It's when you if somebody's been created to that NIGGA mindset, people who are NIGGAs, they move different and they are self-destructive, self-defeating people. All black folk ain't NIGGAs, but there's too many NIGGAs in Black America. And they don't all look the same. Some of them look like your professors. Some of them look like your CEOs. Some of them look like your pastors and your teachers and people who drive those nice fancy cars too. It ain't just the lower level people that they always try to sign that title to. So we have that going on. So that's why we need to be able to move forward and get better in our situation. There's no reason for all these information from these scholars to be out and our situation isn't improving. So we're doing this to damn it try to help improve our situations. This is not just talk. This is how can we act on this stuff. And we need to break this down so you can understand and take action. Take action in your everyday life.
Right.
So anything you want to add before we close this thing down?
I would like to add, I know I said a lot about culture and the cultural aspect versus the biological aspect, but they are connected. And oftentimes understanding the biological aspect will provide insights into the cultural aspect. So we need to understand both. The other thing I would say is thoughts are physical, right? Beliefs are physical. And trying to get somebody to change their thoughts and beliefs is akin to trying to get them to change their physical appearance. And we need to take it just that seriously. When you're going into these conversations, you're going in to either do damage to somebody physically or to perform life-saving surgery. Those are the two options, because thoughts manifest as physical changes in the brain. So I want us to keep that in mind as well as we move forward. That's all.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, we all we got. I'm gonna be saying this all the time. We all we
TMB,
got. Ain't
baby.
nobody's coming to save us. It's on us to do us, but we have to get our individual lives together, our family lives, our community lives, and our collective lives together. We have to do this because, I mean, don't nobody else care about us, and then nobody coming to save us. So it's on us to make sure we break this down and do what we need to do for ourselves. This is my homie Patrick Urban. Tell them about your book again, real quick.
Oh yeah, tell them about the gun line out. So this is my book, The Chasm. And you're gonna rewind to the beginning of the video to hear my synopsis of it, but it's basically talking about how black men and women have grown apart and things we could do to fix it. And you can find it by going to Amazon.com and searching The Chasm by Patrick Urban.
There you go. There you go. Hey man, that's the homie. I appreciate it. I am Joseph Ward. This is On the Shoulders of Giants. If this is your first time, welcome. Please subscribe. Hit that subscribe button. Like this video. Share it, leave a comment. Hey, and we want to know y'all thoughts. Get into the comment. Jump in these comments. Give us y'all thoughts on this breakdown. Also, give us names of scholars that you all want us to do breakdowns on in the future as well. And I'm going to put up a poll. But in this comment, tell us your thoughts and give us names of scholars and information that y'all want us to break down in the future. www.onshoulders1.com is the website. Y'all can support me on Patreon at patreon.com/OTSOG, or you can hit the heart button under this video. And memberships are coming soon. So I look forward to that. I just crossed 20,000 not too long ago. I'm at 21,000. So I want to thank everybody who was a part of helping me get past that 20,000 mark. We're on to 50. Our next, our mine is on 50G, so we can get that. We can get a little plaque or something up around here. We'll put it in the background, but it also shows that there are people who are still interested in us improving ourselves and improving our situation and learning about us, because we can't be the only people around here who don't have no information about our past and our history, as great as it was. So once again, he's Patrick Urban. I'm Joseph Ward, and we catch y'all on the flip side. Love y'all. Catch y'all next time.